The Department of Justice released a chilling letter written by Ryan Ruth, the suspect in the second assassination attempt against former President Trump. Barr telling Fox News Digital it, quote, served no purpose other than to risk inciting further violence. The DOJ received this letter from a witness who claims that it was delivered to them in a box from Ruth months before the assassination attempt. Now, in the letter, Ruth apologizes for not finishing the job and offers $150,000 to anyone willing to, quote, finish the job on Trump. Trump also claims the Harris-Biden administration is, quote, mishandling and downplaying the second attempt on his life. He says, quote, the charges brought against the maniac assassin are a slap on the wrist. Ruth was ordered held on federal gun charges yesterday as prosecutors say that they are building attempted assassination charges against him. Those charges carry a life sentence if convicted. Joining me now is Florida Congresswoman Laurel. She's a member of the House Judiciary, Homeland Security, and Administration Committees. She's also a member of the task force on the attempted assassination of Donald J. Trump. Congresswoman, thanks very much for being here. So the task force is also set to hold its first hearing on the Butler, Pennsylvania assassination attempt this Thursday. Before we get into this letter, tell us what you've learned so far on all of this.
So with respect to the Butler assassination attempt, we have been able to develop a lot of really critical information about what went wrong with Secret Service's methods that day, how this assassin was able to get so close to the president that day, the perimeter that was set up, the communication failures. There are a lot of things that we've already been able to develop that really help inform what needs to change going forward to ensure that Secret Service is keeping former President Trump and all of its protectees safe. So the hearing that we have this week is going to focus on the Butler attempt, and we'll have witnesses from local law enforcement who can really speak to those breakdowns and the security failures that led to that event. So that will be the focus, making sure that the American public gets access to all of the information that the task force members have so far and bring that all to light.
Well, I mean, what about the fact that, you've got all these open questions? Why was the body, cremated, sent to the family to get cremated 3 days after? Why were two assassins able to get so close to President Trump? And the Secret Service talked about a mess up in communication. Is that all it is?
Well, that is part of it. So it's typical for Secret Service to rely on local law enforcement to help supplement their protective detail when they go to one of these rally sites. But a key part of that, in fact, the most important part of that, is that they're operating as a team. So when one member has information about a suspicious person or something dangerous, it's getting out to all of the members quickly. And we know that that did not happen in Butler, Pennsylvania. And that really was one of the things that created such a dangerous situation. So
adding insult to injury, the DOJ releases this letter. People are outraged about it, okay? So, the assassin writes a letter basically offering $150,000 reward to anyone who can complete the job, quote unquote. This was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump, but I am sorry I failed you, the letter addressed to the world. So here's $150,000 to whomever can complete the job, and the DOJ actually releases this. Even Bill Barr was outraged by it. Your reaction?
Well, the letter itself is just shocking and I think really speaks to the critical threat level that we see at this moment in history against former President Trump. And so it is so important that federal prosecutors and anyone involved, both the task force, federal prosecutors, that anyone that touches this is very sensitive to just how dangerous the threat environment is now. And that speaks to the need to elevate the level of protection that President Trump is receiving. He needs to be receiving the full level of presidential protection right now as we get through today from up to Election Day. Clearly, this is a very dangerous period. And the reality is, federal prosecutors have an obligation to provide information like this to defense attorneys and to the court. But there are options that they have, including seeking leave to file it under seal, filing a redacted copy. There are other things that need to be taken into consideration when it comes to releasing information like this. So, of course, we need transparency transparency. We need to understand who this person is and what's going on in his head, whether he was working alone, all of those things. But we also need to be very careful about what information gets out there into the public that could further increase the threats against former President Trump and the other candidates who are out on the trail.
Yeah, let me move on to the campaign. Vice President Harris reportedly planning to visit the southern border on Friday during a trip to Arizona. It comes as newly resurfaced video shows then California Senator Harris protesting against any deportation of migrants at an L.A. parade. This is back in 2018. Watch this.
Up with education, down with deportation. Up with education, down with deportation. Up with education, down with deportation. Up with education, down with deportation.
Yeah, a former San Diego Sector Chief Patrol warning also about the border threat, telling lawmakers he was blocked by the Biden-Harris administration from informing the public about illegal migrants with potential terrorist ties. Watch this. This is unbelievable. Watch.
The Border Patrol saw groups of hundreds and thousands coming into the United States and turning themselves in. These numbers pulled 80, 90, sometimes 100% of the agents on duty away from the border. Border Patrol zones across Texas, Arizona, and California had no agent presence for weeks and months at a time. Those who did not want to be caught could simply walk in. We have no idea who and what entered our country over this time. In San Diego, we had an exponential increase in significant interest aliens. These are aliens with significant ties to terrorism. To quiet the problem, 2 flights a week were provided from San Diego to Texas. These flights simply brought aliens that would have been released in San Diego over to Texas. Each flight cost approximately $150,000. This was the administration's way to try and quiet the border-wide crisis.
So, Congressman, here we have 10 million illegals in the country on Kamala Harris's watch. Now, with 40 days before the election, she claims she's going to go to the border in Arizona. But we're hearing all of these stories of murder, rape, crimes at the hands of migrants. And you just heard this border official telling us under oath that he was told to quiet everything down.
Well, and that's the real Kamala Harris. She is trying to masquerade today as someone who cares about a secure border and community safety. But the reality of her record is somebody who has had wide open borders, liberal bail policies, criminal justice policies that put dangerous people out on the streets. And that is what the American people need to know. These aren't just statistics when we talk about the border. These are real stories of American families who have lost loved ones due to these criminals that we've allowed to come over. There's no accountability. We don't know who these people are. And the testimony that we heard in the Homeland Security Committee is so important because it talks about how there's a lack of tracking who they are. We know that there are people on the terror watch list who've been flown to my community, Tampa. Yeah. Someone on the terror watch list was flown into my community. And, right. And so these are the types, this is the reality of the Biden-Harris immigration agenda. And as much as they may try to depart from it today, the facts are there, the data's there, and this is what they have done to America.
Yeah, I believe it's 350 people who were encountered at the southern border who were actually on the terrorist watch list. I mean, these are the people that we know of who are terrorists trying to come into the country. Do you think that's why she doesn't want to do any interviews? She won't do any interviews with the press. She's afraid of that question. Why did you allow 10 million illegals and why were they unvetted?
Absolutely. She can't answer these questions because the facts speak for themselves. So if she's really put to the test to answer for her record, the American people, she'll be exposed for who she really is and the radical policies that just aren't consistent with what the American people want in a leader.
Congresswoman, thank you. Laurel Lee joining us. Stay with us. We'll be right back.